Hi everyone, so today we're going to talk about how to annotate in the time of the butterflies this quarter, which is going to be different than how you guys have been doing your annotations over the past 3 quarters. So let's take a look at what's going to be different this time. In the past, you guys have been provided guided annotations where we have asked questions to you and given you direction for what you need to annotate in your books and on your post-it notes. This quarter, however, you will begin to do your own annotations, following our traditional guidelines of predicting, asking questions, analyzing important points, summarizing, and stopping at places where you are confused. We're hoping that you guys are going to be able to take what you've learned throughout the year through the Google Docs and the guided annotations and begin to advance into your own annotative work, which is what you'll be doing into 10th grade and beyond. Let's review the types of annotations you can make. The first one you can make is a prediction. In order to predict, you're going to look at what you've read and see what you think is going to happen in the future of the story. The symbol for prediction is a P. Some examples of stems you would say are I predict, or in this passage I think blank will happen. Here's an example prediction. From chapter 1 that we've already read, in which Dede meets the journalist for the first time and shows her her home, after Dede tells the characteristics of each sister, she says Patria was religious, almost always. I can predict the part of the story will include how Patria decided to fall away from part of her religious principles. As you see here, and as you notice, I use the P, as well as highlighting and underlining the point where Dede says, well, almost always, making the prediction that the story will tell all of Patria's fall from her strict religious principles. The next one is questioning, asking questions about what you read. This is very important because you can take note of your progress of understanding throughout the book and ask questions that you can then bring up in class later and ask your teacher or your classmates for clarification. The symbol for questioning is the question mark. Some example stems are, I wonder, and why does this happen, and what does this mean? Here's an example of how you can annotate in the time of the butterflies using your own questioning. My question here at the end of chapter 1 is, why does Dede react so strongly to her father's fortune telling? Why is this so important? I'm not quite sure yet because I haven't read the whole story, but I mark this with a question mark and then annotate my question at the bottom. What you guys will be doing if you do not own your own books will be writing what you see here on post-it notes and putting them onto the pages. What's cool about this question is that this leads me to a prediction. I predict that the author closes the first chapter with foreshadowing. A lot of times authors end chapters with very important themes or points or meditative topics that you should be left thinking about. So always take note of the action at the end of a chapter as possibly very significant. Notice that I mark this with a P, and then I put the author is using foreshadowing in this part. Alright, the next part is very important points, VIPs. You guys have been marking these by using the acronym VIP to sort of trace all the very important parts of the plot or in the story development. You're going to analyze what you read by determining importance. The symbol is VIP. This is important because my evidence will be, or the key point is. Let's take a look at an example, very important point. In chapter 1, I noticed that Dede says, this is certainly one reason why Dede shies from these interviews. Before she knows it, she is setting up her life as if it were an exhibit labeled neatly for those who can read, the sister who survived. Because of this point in the story, when she's mentioning already that she was the only sister who survived, I can make the assumption that perhaps she already feels guilt about being the only surviving sister. I'm going to go ahead and mark this part with a VIP and say that it is important to note that Dede already mentions her guilt about being the one who survives. This shows her reader about her internal conflict about the death of her sisters. I marked this with the symbol VIP and highlighting here, and then wrote Dede feels guilt about surviving. One of the more important things you'll do is also summarizing what you read in each chapter or major section of the chapter so that you can look back later and remember what action occurred in each chapter, and later help you find textual evidence which you will use in your essay writing. The symbol for summarizing that can help you is an equal sign. You could say things like, in this section, who did what, when, where, and why, and the main idea of the part I just read was. Let's take a look at an example summary. At the end of each major section, summarize the main points of the plot. So at the end of this section marked by this line here, I'm going to say that Dede and the journalists from the United States make plans and discuss their meeting time. Then later in my quarter, if I want to go back and find a quotation about this interaction with the U.S. journalist that Dede has describing her family, I could go back and skim my summaries in order to know where that quote might be located in the story, which is very helpful to me in the future. The last part that we're going to talk about is marking confusing points. You need to monitor your comprehension so you can ask your teacher or colleagues questions later that will help clarify the story for you so that you completely understand it. This will help you do better on quizzes and also understand the story and connect and relate to it more, and also be able to use the appropriate quotes in your the textual evidence, and or select the proper textual evidence for your analysis essay you'll write at the end of the quarter. The symbol for stopping at confusing points is the stop sign. You can use this as a marker, saying things like, I am stuck because I don't understand, I am confused by this, or I realized my reading stopped making sense when. Here's an example of a place that I got confused when I was reading this part. I marked the point where Dede's mother mentions that she thinks it's ridiculous that Minerva wants to go study the law because, as she says, "Ay, Dios mío, spare me," Mama sighs, but playfulness has come back into her voice. Just what we need, skirts in the law. I guess I stopped here because I didn't understand why Dede's mom would have such a problem with women studying in the law. What does this show about Dede's mom, and how is it that from my current modern perspective, I think it's a little strange that she would be not supportive of her sister or of her daughter's hope to be a lawyer? So I marked this point as something I'd like to bring up in class later in order to ask my teacher or colleagues what they think about this. I wrote the stop sign and I said, I don't understand why her mother would not support women in the law, marked with highlighting and an underline. The important point to remember in all of these different annotations is that annotations are designed to help you understand the story, mark up the book, and be able to reference the story later for your writing purposes and for any discussions you'll have in class in the future. So the more annotating you do, the better off you're going to be. Your papers should look really messed up with all kinds of writing, scratch marks, underlining, highlighting, note-taking, and the more that you write, the better off you'll be in the future. If you have any questions about this, you can always reference the bookmark that we'll be giving you that has the symbols of each of these different annotations on it to help you guide how you will be doing your annotations in the future. Thanks so much.